This is Joni from Fox and Socks Nursery. I'm going to be making some videos on how to paint ethnic skin. And this baby's actually going to be a fantasy baby, but you can go ahead and follow along to do the first part, which is just the ethnic. And then after that I'll be doing the fantasy. She is going to be an season baby. I already made one for winter and she's going to be for fall, but I plan to make her a very dark ethnic skin tone, and then I'm going to put some red and kind of like an orangey, a yellowy orange color around her for fall harvest colors. So in the meantime, I'll go ahead and get started on her ethnic skin tone. And how I do this is I use Gamsol and thick. I use Genesis paints. So I use Gamsol and the thick medium, and as well as we're going to start off with the lighter skin tone, and then we're going to apply washes and mottling to give her more of a 3D skin tone with lots of rich undertones. So to go ahead and get started, I've got some Flesh 02, or I'm sorry, Flesh 04. I'm going to put some Gamsol in a little container. And then I'm going to add number 4. I want a pretty good size amount since this is going to go all over the entire baby. And we're going to be doing more than one wash. Now the reason I say Gamsol instead of regular thinner is Gamsol is a little more on the oily side and it takes longer for it to dry, so you'll have more time to pounce it, and it should have a more even tone. So I'm going to do it like this. Get it nice and thick. You can see it's getting more concentrated and stir it up pretty well. This is highly pigmented. The darker colors usually are higher pigmented. So I'm also going to be using thick, and with this stuff I'm going to grab a big old glob, put it on there, and it takes a little bit to get this stirred in there, but the reason I use the thick is it makes it darker and it'll be a little easier to add on there, but you still want it on the runny side. You don't want it so thick that it's buttery. You want it a lot thinner than that. So that's why I'm starting out with just a little bit, and then I can always add more if needed. This stuff always takes forever to get stirred up. Anyway, we'll need to get it as good as possible stirred up. Try not to have any floating chunks in there. And you can tell it'll start thickening up a little bit more. It's already thicker than it was. I use thick a lot for creases, hair, and ethnic skin tones. And it's not just the ethnic colors. If I want to make a fantasy baby with different colors, I'll also do this. Like I said, it'll just help it. The paint will blend easier on the doll, and you can pounce it off a little easier with the skim saw. Nobody wants a baby with grit, looks like coffee grounds, and this helps keep that from happening. I don't know if you can, hopefully you can see what I'm doing. I'm sorry it takes a little while to get this stirred up, but I wanted you guys to see how I mix up paint. You can see it's nice and smooth, and it's still runny. My hand's getting tired. I usually start off with very, very light washes, like thin. Most of the time I don't add this first. I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Now, as I want it darker, I'll start adding Flesh 03 and do a few layers, and then I'll do Flesh 04 and just keep adding it to the same mix, darkening it up. But in between these ethnic skin tones, I'll do very light washes of different colors, like reds and purples and blue, and even an apple colored green. Stay away from orange. The brown has a lot of yellow undertone to it anyway, so if you're like me and prefer your ethnic babies to be a little bit more on the warmer side, I will try to neutralize that golden color out, so a lot more purple, and it's got a little bit of an orange undertone too, so purples and blues. I use vein blue a lot, and sometimes I mix that in with eyelid purple to make it even darker. That's what I did for the hair that I was working on for a different baby. I'm going to show you. This is the paint that I mixed up for the last baby that I painted, and I used 02, vein blue, eyelid purple, some black, and some ethnic brow to get this nice and dark. I don't think I want the baby that dark, but I'll be working getting her darker. Okay. This is going to take a lot of sponges, so make sure you've got several handy. Go ahead and get them ready. Now, I don't tear these, I leave them alone. A lot of people, they use the makeup sponges, and that's fine too. Like the big ones you can get at Walmart in the makeup department that are a good 2 inches big. I'll show you what I mean. I don't think I even have any of those, actually. Anyway, I like these. These came from Walgreens. So I'm going to make sure she's ready to go. Oh, baby. This kid is super cute. Let me fix my lighting. Might be able to see a little bit better. Okay. So I'm going to get her started. I always do the face first, and then I work my way around. I'm gonna paint it on, and I don't paint the lips. So I need this on there. Do you see how nice and thin that is? Make sure you have a brush handy to help pull extra paint out of the creases, which I did not have ready. You don't want creases falling into the lips. Paint. So I'm just gonna kind of pounce a little bit. Try to get it as even as possible. I'm gonna wipe off the lips. The reason you want the paint to stay away from the lips, they'll get too dark, and the color that you put on there, the lip color, won't show as well. Looks pretty good. And do this side the same. And don't forget to go under the chin. When you're pouncing, I usually hold it this way so I'm not putting so much pressure on there. You'll end up with spots that are pounced a little more than others, and you want it as even as possible. Make sure I get top of the lip. Go. Pull it out of the eyes, the nose, mouth. That part's a little tricky, but pay attention to the details. After this, we're going to be working on the creases. I should have done that first. I always forget. But the creases are the hardest to keep clean, so it's better to start with that. But anyway, at least I remembered now. So, start with creases first. Use your crease color. Get it out of the nose. That's okay. This first layer, it wouldn't hurt anything to do. Keep it out of the flange. You see it's starting to settle. Make sure you keep your creases really clean. That's why I like using this Gamsol. Gives you enough time to wipe out the creases. And keep going. Make sure you get behind the ear. Neck. And get a big old blob of it. And I can go over the ear. So I don't actually have to paint the ear. You can just use the excess to pounce it on. You want to make sure you get it as even as possible. You don't want any excess on there. Don't force the pounce. Try to keep it as light as you can. It's starting to pool in there. You want to get your color really well even around the ear. It's very important to pay attention at this point. Anytime you're working with the ethnic brown tones, or any color if you do a fantasy baby and you want it like, I don't know, blue for Avatar, you would mix it the same way that I mix this with the Gamsol. Now I've never done an Avatar baby, but that's how I would do it. I'll blow off my sponge a little bit. Try to get it nice and blended. And excess on the ear. Try to go around the ear as close as possible. You don't want to rub it off, otherwise you'll end up with a lighter spot behind the ear. I have my lighting very well. Grab a different one. Sponge is coming off pretty good. Make sure you blend it over where it overlaps. Pull it out of the creases. I don't think I had any excess on this one, but just to be on the safe side. Try to keep your brush dry. If you notice any kind of areas that need to be touched up, or now would be the time to do it. I'm cleaning underneath the chin again because this paint is super watery, and I want to make sure it's not pooling. Gonna hit it one more time. Make sure it's nice and blended. I don't know if you can see, but there's a spot right there behind the ear. I'm taking it off camera real quick to get it better lighting. Okay, looks pretty good. You can tell it did make a little bit of a difference. Okay, I'm gonna set her out to dry. Now that Gamsol takes a little bit longer to dry. I'll go ahead and do a fit. Now with this one, I'm going to go ahead and not do the sole of the foot because I don't want it too dark. I want to be able to see the blush later. So with these, you'd want to start, I'm going to go ahead and get a smaller brush so it'll be a little easier. And I want to make sure my brush is clean, so give me just a minute. Yeah, this one had some pink in there. I probably used this to blush the last baby. It's a nice smaller. Okay, so I'm going to draw a line around where I want the sole to be. I don't want to go all the way to the end of the toe. And I'm not going to go inside the toes. I want that to remain pink. So I'll leave it alone. Okay. I'll get a new sponge. And I want to be very careful to keep it on this side of the line. And I have another brush that I can use as well. It's a little makeup brush. I want to make sure I keep those creases between the toes clean. And you want to make sure you blend it really well on those lines, otherwise it will look odd. I'm just wiping to make sure I stayed on this side of the line. Okay. The little toes, I'm going to do the same. I'm just going to brush right over the top of them, and I'm going to leave the nail alone. I got a little crazy with that, but that's okay. So I'm going to go up around the back of the ankle. I'm going to do the same thing. Blend the line. I pull the paint out of those creases. I'm wiping my little brush on one of the sponges to try to keep it dry. It's really in there. There's a separation between the toes there. I want to make sure I can get it out. I can't say this enough, but creases, creases, creases. You want to make sure those stay nice and cleaned out. And I'm just going back over and wiping to make sure that the part that I want to keep pink for the sole. Okay. I can go back to the other brush now. Okay. Now I don't want to paint too much at once. I want to make sure I have plenty of time to pounce off the excess, and I can also use the excess to finish going around the leg. I don't have to paint the entire thing. Well, this leg I'm pouncing pretty heavy. Okay, I'm gonna hit that crease again. And let's see, there's and I'm changing out my sponge every now and then when I see it's starting to get a lot of excess paint on there. Make sure you blend it really good where it overlaps. Oops. I end up getting this on the toes. Hang on a second. Where'd that one go? Okay, I'm gonna use the edge here. Now I want to keep that blended. I don't want to pull out the entire paint back there. I sometimes have problems with the paint, pulling out too much of the paint in the crease behind the knees and the elbows and the ears. You end up with an uneven amount of paint back there. And you're going to check over the leg again to make sure that the paint is getting put on even and there's no little flecks of pigment from the paint. Sorry. Didn't put it very well on the edge there. Make sure your paint is covering right up to the flange. Okay, and there's one leg. You would do the next leg the exact same. And then you would do the arms. When you do the arms, you will make sure the palms stay unpainted. Let me go ahead and do the other leg real quick. Stir up your paint. Make sure it's going on even. And when we do later layers of this ethnic color, you'll not do the hands and feet as much, because you'll want to leave them just a little bit lighter than the rest of the baby. A little excess there. Make sure you get every bit of excess paint off. And when you see separations in the toe, you want to make sure you pounced off and blended that edge really well. It shouldn't be an actual line, it should just be a hint of a line. Make sure everything's blended. It's the nice thing about Gamsol. You can take your time putting it on. I apologize if I keep coming off camera. And you're trying to get it an even amount all over. But remember, the feet and the hands will be lighter as you go. I try to keep the flange wiped out too, so you don't end up with excess paint in there. I'm going to make sure I've got it in the crease. Blend it, because I don't want to wipe it out too much. You notice I'm not doing this. I'm just going to kind of pat. Looks nice and even. Hit that again just in case. Okay. We're going to do a hand. Smaller brush, and I'm going to draw a line there too. I'm just going to do the top of the finger. Now with these, I'm going to go, since the hand is open, I'm going to be really careful and just do one finger at a time. I'm going to make sure I get that line blended really well. And since the fingers are separated, I'm going to be very careful and get those finger lines blended. I don't want any extra excess paint, so I'll make sure I get that off. And then between the fingers too. Okay. Let's do the thumb. Okay, now I'm going to do the wrist. Okay, I'm not dragging it, I'm just patting it. Pull out, I don't know what that is. And every layer you're going to do the same thing. I'm going to draw around the around the soles of the feet and the palms of the hands. You'll do the exact same way, and you'll do that around the mouth too. And I bake between layers just so it doesn't disturb what I've already put down. I can see some streaks, so I'm gonna pounce it again. And I'm just checking to see if the sections are blended into each other. when you set it on the drying rack, make sure you don't bump it into another limb if it's not dry. Okay. And this is a closed hand. And you're going to do it the exact same way. It's just, you have to be more mindful of the fingers. You want to pull the paint out between them. And the reason I do sections is just to make it a little easier to keep cleaner lines. That's good. I keep getting off camera, I'm sorry. And again, I'm just going to pat, pull that out. Make sure I get all the deep creases area cleaned out. Okay. Now your lines don't have to be perfect, but keeping them nice and neat will make a big difference. Let's see here. Okay. You see that? A little brown speck. Make sure you inspect your limbs and your head. You want to make sure you get everything blended nicely. Okay, I'm gonna let those completely dry and show you what she looks like. She's not quite dry yet. You can see she's got some spots. Hang on a second. You can see some speckles in her that I missed, so I should have been paying more attention. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a spot there. So I'll just leave it though. We'll just call it a freckle. How's that? And then she's got a spot there. That'll probably be covered up with hair. And she's got a spot on her nose. Oh, this is frustrating. And those spots will just get darker with every layer. So definitely make sure you go back over your baby before it dries completely. Try to get all those little specks if you miss something. I don't know if I can get this out or not. I did get it off her nose, so I guess that's better than nothing. After she's been baked, I'm going to do her creasing. Again, do that first. Don't be like me and forget. And I'm just checking for specks, and there's one there. Man, I was not paying attention, was I? Okay. I'm also checking the creases just to make sure I got as much out as I could. I'm wondering if this was like on the vinyl before I started putting paint on there, because they kind of look like those little salt and pepper flecks that get in the vinyl sometimes. Okay. Some of these are just wiping right off, so I'm not quite sure what those things are, but they look like little pepper flakes. Okay, we'll let that dry, and then I'm going to do another video of how to do the creases. So that'll probably take a good 20 minutes. So anyway, stay tuned.